Okay, Krystal, you had a time to talk to your attorney, so can you explain to me what you wanted to clarify about what was thrown in to the fire by you?
So the things that were thrown into the fire by me were the belongings from Kelsey's house, the curtains, the pillows, the stuffed animals, the cleaning supplies, the towels, everything that I said on record prior to everything that I took from her house.
Okay.
I also threw in all the clothing that I was wearing, plus a pair of shoes that I had been wearing. And I believe that that's all that I had with me that I threw into the fire.
So what kind of shoes were you wearing?
They were black tennis shoes.
You know the brand?
Fila's.
And the clothing that you were wearing, can you just describe the clothing?
So I had on a white bunny suit or white jumpsuit. Underneath the jumpsuit, I had a sweater and a pair of pants.
Okay, what was the color of the sweater?
Gray.
And
pants were black.
And did the pants, were they a particular brand of pants?
No, they were just leggings.
Any writing on the sweater?
Shoes. No. It was just a gray hoodie.
Socks, underwear, bra?
All of that I kept on.
Okay. Any kind of hair netting?
Cover for my hair and shoe coverings also.
Okay.
And gloves.
And just to clarify, the Kelsey's purse and contents, you said that you had taken those out and threw those in?
No, those went to Idaho.
Those went to Idaho with you?
The purse and its contents and the phone went to Idaho.
Okay. And those were burned where?
At my property.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. So it's pretty incredible news. The mistress of Patrick Frazee, who was effectively an accessory, who took a plea deal, it looks like her sentence has been vacated, which means she may end up just getting a year in prison, barely a year and 3 months. She's already asked to be placed in a halfway house. That was about a year ago in March 2020, and now it looks like her sentence might be thrown out completely. It is incredible, it is shocking, it's disgusting, especially when you consider what we are actually talking about here. And it's not me who's saying that it was a deal with the devil, it was Dan May. Let's listen into what he said after the sentencing and conviction of Patrick Frazee. Listen in.
We did a deal with the devil. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, and I'm not proud of that. But there's no question that Kelsey wouldn't have had the sure justice today without making that deal with the devil. We didn't pick her. As I said before, it's the defendant who picked her. He's the one who decided to put all these witnesses into this case.
So that was a clip from KKTV 11 News in Colorado, and now we're going to go to Krystal Kenney, Patrick Frazee's mistress, a former nurse from Idaho who helped destroy evidence. She was also, the clip I played right in the beginning is actually her at the burn site where they literally burned Kelsey's body in a plastic tote on Patrick Frazee's driveway with his mother in the house just a couple of yards down the driveway. She was apparently home when it happened. And while the body was being burned, Krystal Kenney threw in a lot of blood-soaked items, toys, curtains, all sorts of material into the furnace, and then also removed some of her own clothing. And so you can imagine this scene, this huge fire with this body that has been totally broken, burning, and the perpetrator, Frazee, standing over it, as well as Krystal Kenney. And what a ghastly scene. Can you imagine what they were saying and what they were doing? And, ultimately, all that was left of Kelsey Bereth was a tiny fragment of her tooth. And I think an anthropologist was just able to say that it belonged to a human female, and that was all. That was all that they really found. It was sort of a area on the driveway it had been covered in a layer of gravel, but there was an area in the driveway that was where there was the plastic had formed like a crust, the burnt plastic of the tote, and then there was another area that could have been something like human fat. There was just an oily residue that had also been left behind, but otherwise there was absolutely no evidence of Kelsey Bereth, obviously no DNA. And I don't know, in many ways I found this case more shocking, more appalling, more scarily troubling than the Chris Watts case, especially the involvement of the mistress in this particular case. And that is why I wrote a book titled Murder Most Foul. Now let's go to Krystal Kenney walking through Kelsey's apartment, obviously not for the first time. She's wearing a police CBI agent jacket, obviously to try and protect her from media scrutiny, but she's on camera. This is part of the body cam footage, and the CBI are trying to find out from her what the blood situation was like, because obviously all of it was wiped away. And what the Frazee case shows is how effectively evidence can be destroyed, not only blood evidence but also cadaver evidence, including scent traces. And we know this because of the confession of Krystal Kenney. So this is her in Kelsey's home at Woodland Park. I think it was December 3rd, 2019, and she was basically walking them through, telling them where the blood spatter was, and in this particular instance she was talking about what was going on in the bathroom. When she does take them through the lounge, she actually has the handle of a broom or some kind of a rake or something, and she needs to extend high into the air to show the upper extent of where poor Kelsey's blood was distributed in the lounge, on the lounge wall of her home.
So moving into the bathroom here, can you tell me what you saw in here and what you cleaned up?
I didn't see anything. I was specifically told to clean the bathroom.
Okay.
So, but I didn't see anything. There might have been blood. There was a lot of blood. So
Right.
they're on the floor, all over the floor. And there may have been bloody footprints in here, but I don't specifically remember.
Okay.
I wiped the sink down. I wiped the toilet, the top of the toilet. I turned on the shower just in case there was stuff in the bottom. I didn't see anything in the bottom of the shower.
All right. So if I understand you correctly, you saw blood on the floor or no? In the bathroom, do you remember?
I don't remember.
All right. Okay. So coming out, can you show me or tell me where you got additional trash bags from?
Right there.
Okay, that's the athlete. Okay. Anything else in here that you grabbed?
There was a white bucket, like a white cleaning bucket.
Okay.
But I don't see it in there anymore.
All right. Do you recognize any of this stuff?
What's very weird in the footage of Krystal Kenney is that she seems to have, I don't know whether it's a nervous sniff or what is going on, but she sniffs almost constantly. And it's just very odd. It's just very strange to see what is going on there. But if we just go back in time, in late November 2019, Patrick Frazee was sentenced for the brutal premeditated murder of his fiancée, Kelsey Bereth. I remember when the case was just starting, some people were talking on social media about the fact that she was beaten to death with a baseball bat, and I thought that was absurd. And bear in mind, we just come through the, this was November 2019, we just come through the Chris Watts case where there wasn't a drop of blood that we're aware of. And so what they were talking about was this bloodbath, and just the sheer contrast of it made me think, well, this just doesn't sound likely at all. And I remember being quite argumentative, just saying, I don't think that is the case at all. Or you telling me that she was bludgeoned to death with a baseball bat, simply because it was so unnecessary way of inflicting unnecessary pain on someone, but then that is exactly what it turned out to be. And apparently Patrick Frazee himself said to his mistress something like, next time I'm not going to do it that way, or something like that. A crazy statement to make in the first place, but anyway, but as a result of the way in which he murdered his fiancée, also the mother of his child, there was this massive bloodbath. There was blood everywhere. There was blood on the not on the ceiling, but very high up on the lounge walls. It was all over the lounge, as you've just heard her saying. And ultimately, interestingly, the police couldn't find any blood. Despite this massive bloodbath, there was also a massive mop-up operation by Krystal Kenney. And when she pointed out where the blood was, when she pulled up the floors, they literally removed the carpet or whatever it was, and tore out the timber, and then they found small amounts of blood that had seeped through the cracks in the wood, kind of thing. So it was through Krystal Kenney that you really got this graphic representation of the crime scene. If you didn't get it from her, you would have assumed something else, as I did. In the end, Krystal Kenney took a plea deal, and in exchange for the plea deal, she sort of walked the investigators through the various crime scenes. There were a couple. I think there was one. The one was in Woodland Park. The other one was on Patrick Frazee's driveway, which is where her body was incinerated. I'm not 100% sure if she took them to the barn where I think the tote was temporarily stored. I'm not sure if she took them there, but that certainly was part of the crime scene fabric. In any event, she turned state witness, and it was thanks to her in large part that law enforcement were able to nab Frazee, as you heard in the clip with Dan May, where he talked about a deal with the devil. Put otherwise, without the mistress's shocking and damning testimony, Frazee probably would have gotten away with his crime. And so the district attorney is caught between a rock and a hard place. Does he try to go after Frazee and his mistress, as law enforcement would want to do? Does he go after both of them and then fail in his prosecution? Or does he make a deal with one of them and then make sure he gets the other one? The problem with that situation is it's looking now, almost, basically a year and 3 months later, it's looking like Krystal Kenney, the absurdly light sentence that she's gotten so far, 3 years. 3 years is essentially for accessory. I mean, what else is it if you are helping someone clean up a crime scene where someone was murdered? What else is that except accessory? And I think the charge in the end that she got was something like tampering with a deceased human body. And now she's even arguing that sentence is too heavy. And so what this just illustrates is the difficulty prosecutors can have in prosecuting their cases, right? And also the strange position a mistress might find herself in, where she's both trying to help the love of her life, and then she turns on him and then helps herself, kind of thing. So it looks like the sentence is going to be thrown out altogether. It's possible that it might just be commuted, I think, to possibly less, to 2 years. We don't know. But at the moment, the sentence has been vacated, which means it's been done away with, and they must now decide on another sentence. I think if the law runs its course, they will try to give her the maximum sentence, whatever that is. But it's looking like it's going to be less than 3 years. So, we'll see. We do know that last year in March, Krystal Kenney already wanted out. So as early as just a couple of months after the trial, she already wanted to be transferred to a halfway house. Bear in mind, sorry, I don't know if that was last year. Yes, it was last year. But bear in mind that was when the coronavirus was taking root, and you can imagine a nurse being very hyper aware of what could happen in prison with coronavirus sweeping through. The crazy thing about the current situation is that Kenney effectively, as I say, just got 3 years for accessory to murder after the fact. She wasn't charged with that even. And, you know, he spoke about this, the district attorney spoke about it being a slap on the wrist, and now it's even going to be less than a slap on the wrist. I think the Gazette described, you know, there's a photo of Patrick Frazee heading to prison, and, you know, this was for the murder of his fiancée, also the mother of his daughter. And then not only did his mistress do nothing to prevent it, but helped him. They basically described Kenney as doing everything but swing the bat. You know, she destroyed Kelsey's cell phone. She helped in creating the narrative that Kelsey was still alive by sending bogus texts, right? And I think the Krystal Kenney scenario presents a very interesting real life analogy to the Chris Watts case. You've got a lot of people baying for the blood of Nicole Kessinger, but they've got no idea what a actual accessory thing would look and feel like. They've got no idea what would be involved. And so in this case, for example, Krystal Kenney takes Kelsey's phone, sends fake texts from it, sends the police on a wild goose chase thinking, well, she must be alive if she's somewhere else, if she's somewhere besides where Patrick Frazee is, and frustrates and complicates the investigation. There's nothing at all like that from Nicole Kessinger. And when you compare deleting tweets to someone literally mopping up a crime scene, it's absolutely, you can't compare them, it's totally different. That critique, by the way, and this is something from the Gazette, was actually from Kelsey's mother, Cheryl Bereth. She said basically that what Krystal Kenney did was everything but swing the bat. And that was a letter that she wrote and read aloud at Frazee's sentencing. And it just, according to the Gazette, this is a quote, it, quote, underscored continuing anger over Lee's plea bargain, which left her facing 3 years in prison, but also eligible for probation. And so Cheryl Bereth signed off saying she didn't deserve this plea deal, end quote. Now, I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I've also got to say I think Patrick Frazee did deserve it. Patrick Frazee deserved the deal in a way. It was justified in terms of getting somebody to be fully accountable, and so somebody was. And that is unfortunately how justice works. It can be quite rough sometimes. You can score a point in this area and lose a point in that area. I think this underscores the difficulty prosecutors face in bringing some cases to trial, particularly where the evidence, including and especially autopsy evidence, is either iffy or non-existent. And that is the case, especially in the Patrick Frazee case. That is somewhat the case in the Chris Watts case. I think it also puts into perspective the hysteria around another witness and another mistress in the Chris Watts case. The difference there, besides the length, scale, and scope of Kessinger's relationship to Watts compared to Kenney, as well as the scale and scope of her involvement in Watts' familicide, none, is that as far as we know, Kessinger didn't take a plea deal, apparently because she didn't need one. Now, when I want to talk a little bit about, I speak about it at some length in the book Murder Most Foul, but you know, I want to talk a little bit about the length, scale, and scope of Kessinger's relationship to Watts compared to Kenney. Kenney was actually pregnant at one point with Frazee's child and had an abortion. She thought she was going to marry him. He bought her a dog when she did get married to somebody else. Their relationship lasted, well, I don't want to misspeak now, just something in the order of 6 years or something like that. Could even have been longer, but it was a long relationship. And I know people will say, yes, Chris Watts and Kessinger knew each other a long time. I think at the most they knew each other perhaps 1 year, and I think they only knew each other in the biblical sense perhaps for a month. I don't think there was much investment between one another. They saw one another at work, but I don't think there was much beyond a sexual relationship, much beyond getting along very well. I think there was the possibility, but only expressed in August, that they might move in together. So I do think there was a strong sense of commitment and investment from Watts. But I think the thing that many people miss is that there wasn't a very strong sense of commitment from Kessinger, especially, and this is to her credit, especially when she started figuring out what was going on. That he probably had harmed his family. And so a key difference between Kessinger and Kenney is that Kessinger, let's say you acknowledge that Kessinger knew that Shanann was pregnant, right? Well, here you have Kenney knowing that Kelsey had a 2-year-old child, and it's now killing someone in front of the 2-year-old child, right? And that is literally what happened, that Patrick Frazee killed his fiancée with a little girl present in a absolutely brutal way. And I must say, I do wonder whether Chris Watts found his version to some extent by paying attention to the Frazee case. I mean, the version that one or both of the children were still alive. It's just an interesting thing to consider, because the cases played out almost at the same time, and one wonders whether Frazee didn't learn something from the Watts case, especially in terms of the phone narrative, and whether Watts later on, once he was incarcerated, when he had to come up with his version, in February 2019, whether he didn't say something or didn't take a leaf out of the Frazee criminal methodology. It's something that I do discuss in Murder Most Foul. I also think this does raise the question, did Nicole Kessinger take a plea deal? And I think the issue is she either took a plea deal, and because the prosecutors and law enforcement believed that she wasn't involved, it wasn't necessary for her to, and it wasn't necessary for her to testify in court, then it wouldn't be necessary to have a trial as you had with Krystal Kenney. I'm not completely, I don't know the law that well to know that if there's a plea deal, does it have to be communicated to the public? I do think you can have a plea deal that can be conditional. It could be conditional that they have a right to appeal it, and it's possible that Chris Watts had that. I just don't think so. As far as I know, he didn't reserve the right to appeal, but I could be wrong. And then it's possible also that you can have a plea deal that is conditional on confidentiality. And who knows if Nicole Kessinger did take a plea deal. I'm not saying that she did. I mean, we don't know. There's no evidence to support that. But if she did take a plea deal, perhaps part of the condition was that she wouldn't ever talk about the case. In other words, if there were any charges against her or any, if there was anything like that, then that wouldn't come into being for as long as she didn't talk about the case. I think that's possible. I don't know how probable it is. It probably bears repeating the sort of testimony Kenney gave. So she actually testified at Frazee's trial. That's probably also part of the plea deal, that she stand up in court and talk about the same things that she said during the crime scene walkthroughs, which was recorded on the body cam. By the way, some of the testimony that she gave was really it was just incredible. It was shocking, but I also learned a lot that, what she used to destroy evidence and how effectively, that I certainly learned something through someone who participated in crime scene cover-up, telling the police exactly what she did. It gave you an insight into how to do it, I guess. And that, the absence of evidence, again, doesn't mean evidence of absence. The absence of evidence is evidence. So, you must bear in mind, cadaver dogs came into Kelsey's lounge after she'd been murdered there and after there'd been a bloodbath there, and they didn't alert. And that should give you pause in the Chris Watts case. Frazee actually told her, and I think she was in Idaho at the time, after asking her repeatedly if she would kill Kelsey, he eventually told her, "You've got a mess to clean up." And then she drove down, I think through the night, she drove down and then spent several hours at the crime scene. You've just heard her earlier in the video talking about what she wore there, and they actually found streaks on the couch and I think on the television, which to them, this is the investigators, to them indicated that someone had cleaned up the crime scene, probably using, detergents and that sort of thing. They also noticed the smell, like an aroma, I think, when they came in. And I think the thermostat was set quite high when they came in as well, which is quite interesting. So over several hours, Krystal Kenney got to work cleaning the crime scene, filling around 4 garbage bags, could be 4 or 5, with blood-soaked rags as part of her cleanup, and then went to pick up lunch at a local drive-through burger joint, I think it was Sonic, for her beau, Patrick, and Kelsey's 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. So after cleaning up this bloodbath, she then ordered lunch and then drove to Patrick's ranch and then had lunch, I guess, with Patrick and the daughter of the victim that she just cleaned up after. In the CCTV footage where Krystal Kenney is ordering food, you can actually see her fixing her hair while she's waiting for the delivery to be made, through the window, through the cubicle. So I'll put a link to that in the description. I'll also put a link to Murder Most Foul, my book on the Patrick Frazee case. I really recommend reading it. I will be putting up another video on Chris Watts. It's just a short one where Shanann takes a photo of Chris Watts and says, "He may kill me for taking this photo." I'm going to be putting that up, and I'm also going to be doing another analysis of the Sermon on the Porch. I'll talk about that in a little bit of detail this Sunday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time when I do a live, and that live will be dealing with some of your questions on the Chris Watts case, also on the JonBenet Ramsey case, but I mostly want to be talking about Chris Watts' psychology and some of the lingering misunderstandings around that, some of them highlighted in this recent body language analysis done on Chris Watts. So that should be quite an interesting live. So make sure you're there on Sunday, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I think that's 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, and I think that's 7 p.m. in the UK. It's 9 p.m. in South Africa. If you're interested in the Patrick Frazee case, there is a playlist of 13 videos that I covered at the time of the trial, and so I'll put a link to that in the description as well, so you can check out the highlights of the Frazee trial. Thank you for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.